How's it going, ASLers? Welcome to another Tactical Tuesday. This week we have a variety of questions stemming from starting to get into a little bit more ASL discussion here, as well as SK discussion. So if you enjoy ASL discussion, you have some questions, if you want to enlighten us on what you know, bring us a situation on certain things, we'll add them to the mix, but we're adding more ASL information as we go by. And as we do that, simply because ASL is more complicated than SK, it's going to give you a wider variety of depth that may otherwise not incur in starter kit. Prime example, close combat and melee. Starter kit, you go into melee, you don't come out until everyone's broken or you're all dead. That's about it. ASL, not the case. Not the case. And we'll just leave it as that. So I think we discussed that a little bit here. Most of this episode, I believe all of it, is just questions and answers. And just going over discussions over what some of the players have experienced during their games or experienced watching other people play their games. And that's what it's all about, is just clarity. We'll just bring something here you may not be quite familiar with, or whatever. Nobody may be familiar with it. Maybe we could find an avenue of being able to answer that particular question. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the episode. Again, double speed. That way you can just watch it during your lunch hour or over a couple days during your lunch hour, and you'll be fine. Most of the topics go to about 20 to 30 minutes each, perhaps. And that way you could easily watch the first part during your lunch hour and whatever during the week. So stretch it out if you need to. Doesn't matter to me, or double speed it. All right. All right. Thanks, guys. And we'll see you at the end. All right. If everyone's synced in, we got board 24.
To whom?
To not sure.
Okay.
Well, if you're not sure, how do we know?
Good question.
Then you sync into anybody, because anyone should. If they don't have it up, then you go to the next one. Then your next one.
Okay. I don't see anyone.
And that's how you're sure.
Status.
You're not in the room. You got to be in the room first, Steve.
Yeah, I know.
See, wait. Let me lock it first. Well, hold on.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I was like, crest of the map. Oh, that's all good. All right, let's go. Let's rock. Let's rock it. Crest status.
Pick a gully over here, I guess. Really doesn't matter.
Yes.
What were they? I guess it really doesn't matter for units either.
Black SS.
Where did my...
Not.
Well, I thought I put a crest status on there and it disappeared or something.
No, I still see it on mine.
I can't see it on mine.
H5? I see it on H5. Unless.
I know, that's where I put it. And I can't see it anymore.
Oh,
Wow.
that's weird. That's like a counter. I've had that problem with some overlays before, but not with counters.
That's weird.
Your 328s are gone now, so okay.
I'm dragging crest status counters down and nothing's showing, so I don't know what the hell's going on.
Seeing all press counter appearing.
Yeah, I see all that crap dropping down. Not sure. Reload or some crap like that. Resync.
I'm gonna leave.
What version do you have?
6.6.3.1 and 3.6.5.
Okay, I don't think it should be a problem with the counters.
Anyway,
so, but you never know. I mean, those are pretty much the same family of update. That's weird. All right, we'll sync to anybody or close the window out and then pop it back in. The Russian 000. Wow. Wonder what he ELRs to. Jesus. And Soikel.
Yesterday I lost all Vassal at about 3 o'clock. And other people were losing it too. Well, it says I'm there.
Yep.
I'm not.
No, you're not. It doesn't. There you go. You just pop the nutball. No, nutball's in the room. But not you. There you go. You just popped in the room. Okay.
Oh boy, there's lots of counters on there.
Yeah, there you go. So you see him now? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right. So I'll grab a unit here. It just has to do with when a unit is in crest status and then it moves out of crest status. It takes 2 movements. Okay, let's say this guy gets shot. Now he doesn't survive, and oh god.
Your crest status isn't faced right, by the way.
Well, does it matter?
It does. If you're when you're playing a game, it does.
Well, I thought crest status could go on any way you put it.
No, the center's got to face an actual elevation. Like that would be illegal. That would be legal. There's only 3 ways a crest status can be placed in that particular location.
Okay. All right, I didn't know that either. Okay, so this guy breaks,
Okay.
but he was in crest status when he broke.
Okay.
And now there's other units around him, of course. Anyway, let's just say some guy's next to him.
Okay.
Now, when he goes, it takes 2 movement factors to get out of crest status. So, is he interdicted twice?
No. It's per location. The interdiction is not really an attack. This guy's, for all intents and purposes, what happens to this unit right here?
To the DMer?
What happens to this DM unit in the route phase?
Well, he has to. Well, it depends on the rules, but he'll generally have to get away from the 238.
Okay. So let's say nothing else is into effect. So how would you route this unit, and where would you route?
Well, if he has to move
Oops.
2 movement factors to get out of crest status, it seems like he's next to the enemy unit and has to be interdicted.
Can you leave crest status and enter an adjacent hex?
No, you have to leave crest status first, I think, and then go to another hex.
Yeah, but isn't that part of the expenditure? So I mean, obviously, it's like, well, you got to go there. Let's say, that's technically your route location. Okay, so it's 2 to kind of 2 to get out of crest status, and then 2 to go there. So it's 4 MF to get there.
But it would be uphill, so it'd be double to get up there.
No, you're in crest status.
You're in crest status. The entire point is you're not in the depression. You're at level 0. You're hugging the lip of the.
Oh. So when I come out of crest status, I'm at level 0. Oh.
Well, you're at the level above what the depression is.
Right,
in this case, you're at level -1.
I'm at the I5 green level. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Which in this valley would be -1. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But can you route there? Can the broken unit combine that, and essentially, if that were a good order unit, and again, this I'm kind of looking up right now anyway. It just simply says if broken crest infantry must leave their crest status during the route phase.
Right.
And so if you treat this as it is not a foxhole, but they treat it as entrenchment benefits. So that's where I think the crest rules, you got to be very careful with the words you're looking in the crest rules, because trenches are considered a type of entrenchment. Foxholes are a type of entrenchment. So for a normal unit, if this unit were unbroken, right, and this is what I always hate for this stupid rule, because they consider it an entrenchment, and essentially, they want to treat it as foxholes. When you enter G5, and I don't like this rule, but whatever, you have to exit the crest status, which would cost 1. Essentially, you're crossing that hex side, right? And then you're going to enter this. It will cost 1 movement factor to do that combined with the G5. I would like to think that it's combined with it, but since you're leaving the crest status, it's like exiting a foxhole on the hex side, and this guy could fire on him with a -2 modifier. I honestly think that's the dumbest rule in the entire world, but that's what most people seem to think how it applies, and then he would go 3. So you could be subject to first fire, non-assault movement in the open, depends if you're not, whatever non-assault movement, but that essentially is a move in the open. I'm really not a big fan of that interpretation, simply because if you were to drop down in the crest, you have the movement factors. If you drop down here and then enter up into here, you get snapshot, but you don't get the -2. So you're covering the exact same hex side, and it just doesn't make any sense. It actually takes more movement factors to do that than just to leave crest status. And why common sense doesn't come into play then, I don't have any clue. But if you're broken there, the question is, does the same thing apply? In that case, if the same thing applies, and I'm not sure that it does, this is why we have these discussions. Most of the time, a broken unit can combine, go from foxhole to foxhole and not have to worry about leaving the open. When you exit a foxhole, you don't. As long as you're going into another thing, you can go without taking interdiction. I believe that's how I would how I would translate it. Is essentially you're going to be going to this location for a cost of 3 movement factors.
Right.
If you couldn't go there, or if there were no other route terrain, you would essentially have to go down, be subject to interdiction, and therefore, either going here and subject to interdiction, or entering this location, or not entering the same location. If you're dropping down in the gully, then you also be interdicted. You have to be adjacent, and then this guy would then have to surrender to the 238. But let's assume that no quarter's in effect and he has to route away. Then you could not go down into the crest status. You'd have to exit directly into this location here, because theoretically you'd be in the same location. It's really odd, and it's considered the same location and expending movement factors, and again that's probably why they've incorporated, like, if this was a foxhole. Let me get a foxhole. Let me see, where is it? There's got to be a fortification up here somewhere. And that's probably why they included that into the foxhole rules. I gotta be honest with you. It's just a mechanic. So if you're in the foxhole, all right, and you want to go to this hex, then you say, oh, I gotta move out first. And in that case, you're moving adjacent to, you're expending movement factors. You're not entering a new hex, which it may or may, if you're not entering a new hex, if that's the qualifier for surrender, then you actually don't have to worry about that. You're just going to get interdicted here. But you'd have to move up and then over. And then, so therefore, the foxhole, you're just really going to be screwed. So what they did is you say, okay, if you're leaving a foxhole and you're broken, you can combine them and just enter the next hex. That avoids the getting out into the exact same location. This is exactly the same thing, but the problem is you essentially, which is actually kind of interesting that you bring it up, this unit only has one direction to go. And he only can go that direction. He can't even go down, because he's still exposed to this. Now, again, I'd have to check out the route rules in terms of expending movement factors versus entering another. Instead of moving adjacent to him, obviously we can't do that because you're moving adjacent to an enemy. You're already adjacent to him, so the question becomes, can you expend movement factors as you're adjacent to him? In this case, this would be one of the few times, because you're not getting closer in location. You're in the same location. You're just expending movement factors there. In case you you had two, in case like this was a woods, like the same sort of woods like this, could you drop down here, take interdiction, and then enter this woods instead of that one? If that was your goal. That sort of thing.
Well, it would still be what, 3 MF at that point. Let's assume there is woods in the location you're in presently. If you wanted to drop down into the gully, right? If you were in crest status right now, you had to.
I think it's 2. I think it's 2 to drop down.
Yeah.
All right. So in theory, you couldn't drop down and move to let's say the woods in this location because that would cost you 4, whereas that costs you 3.
Oh, all right. I see what you're saying. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Because this would be closer than MF. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But like I'm saying, if this were not a gully, if this were like this over here, something like this.
Oh, okay.
If it were not a gully and you could choose between them, I'm just so you could. So if say you wanted to go to this one instead of that one, yeah, you could. I mean, yeah, you're right. The question is can you the question I would have is can you expend movement factors in the same location because you're not moving to an adjacent hex to an enemy you're already adjacent to. You're just expending. Does anyone?
Yeah.
That'd be interesting because sometimes, yeah, you're right, Mark. I think it doesn't really matter. I think you just whether you're there or there. I don't think you can go down at all. So I think it's a
Yeah.
moot point, to be honest with you, unless something else kind of is really screwed up. You'd have to exit the crest status, just like you're exiting a foxhole, and you have to go because that would be 3 in this one over here if you
Yeah.
drop down. I'm not sure why you would, but because you have the crest thing
Right.
over there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, according to A10.51, nor if adjacent to a known armed enemy unit may it route into another hex adjacent to the same enemy unit. You're right in terms of it doesn't say anything about expending MF in the hex you're in.
all right. So that'd be interesting. I'd like to know if there's an actual game terrain or something like that. There's got to be something with all the different terrain types. But you're right, Mark. It's you can't really drop down here. Well, you don't have to take the shortest route. I mean, theoretically, right? He could theoretically go down there. Let's say that if this were a
the closest location in MF.
Right.
I mean, eventually, right, you can take a different route to get there, but this would still be your route destination.
Right. Let's say why would we want to do that, gentlemen? Because the rules apparently say that you can route to, or you can expend movement factors, as Mark just pointed out, as long as you're not moving into an adjacent hex to an enemy unit, which we're not doing.
But could you get there in this case? Let's say you drop down into the gully. That's what, 2 or 1 or 2?
That's 2, and then this will be 4. 2, 6.
Oh, 2, 6. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yep. 2, 6. But then it would be 2 here. Then it would be 4 here, and then you couldn't get there, so you couldn't kind of go around.
Right. Yeah. You couldn't take that route. Yeah. So you would still be going to G5, but so the next question is why would you want to drop down into crest status and take that interdiction, or would you take interdiction?
Well, you're considered an open ground, right? You're considered an open ground if somebody has line of sight to you, and the 238 has line of sight.
And so, is the interdiction expending MF, or so? I guess there would be because when you leave a foxhole, if you just come out of a foxhole and you don't add that to the next hex, then you would be interdicted.
You'd be interdicted if you were right. If you decided to, for whatever bizarre reason, you decide not to expend the extra MF to enter the next foxhole, then yeah, you're in open ground. You get interdicted.
Right. Right. That makes sense. That makes sense. So in what sort of circumstance would you let me change this first. Well, in what certain circumstance would you want to then expend movement factors into your same hex or location? The same location in this case, same location. Why would you want to do that in this specific instance, knowing that you're going to take interdiction versus avoiding it? Why would you want to take that interdiction?
Maybe you hope you get pinned. I don't know.
Well, if you get pinned, you're screwed, right?
Well.
If you get pinned, you're done.
Yeah, I guess you have to. Yeah. Okay.
What do you think? What do you guys think?
If the unit's concealed, to interdict.
Oh yeah, true, absolutely. The unit could be concealed next to him, right? Then you'd have to lose concealment. That's a very, very good point. Was that Mark?
No. Well, the other Mark. Okay.
The other Mark.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's absolutely that's brilliant, to be honest with you. That's a good way of stripping concealment in the route phase. And why would you want to do that, Mark? Is the timing a big deal? Do we care? I mean, sometimes we don't, right? I mean, anytime you strip concealment from an enemy unit, it could be a good thing. But what when could that be very helpful for us? You know, maybe we're coming up into a prep fire phase, and
Yeah.
we don't know if this guy's a dummy or whatever. And if we can get him to strip concealment, even if it might be costing us a half squad or something like that, well, you know, most likely going to pass this. Now you might have an opportunity to say prep fire LMG or a mortar, something like that, on that guy's location, which might precipitate a decent attack versus you having to move a half squad in there, him blasting him, and now you've got another broken unit or essentially another lost unit in that mix sort of thing. So that would be a good tactical way of losing concealment. Matter of fact, I did that very similarly. Is route a unit into a concealed unit's location. You may lose the unit because he would end his movement phase next to the known enemy unit, but you would cause his loss in concealment, and that would be very useful. You know, let's take an example like this. I'm just going to move him over here, and let's say, and here's why you'd want to do that. Let's see, you've got something like this. And let's say your 628's concealed, right? I'm not going to conceal him, but let's just say concealed. Can I make this a bigger one? No, I can't. Anyway, this guy's concealed. He's concealed. And let's say he's got like 2 units, or just go with just the 1 unit. And this guy has to route. Right. And he's got concealed unit. Let's just say, you know, whatever you're going to route. You could legit route this direction. He'd have to reveal 1 unit. Right, and he only has 1 unit. He would be gone, and then what does that do for us if it's our turn? It's the Russian player turn. What does that do for us? This guy's concealed. What do you think? Castle, get some feedback on your side, Castle.
Sorry.
So what does that give us as the Russians? When we route in that location, go, oh shit, failure to route. Oops. Oopsie.
Okay, but now, as you said, now the half squads, now, right, in the prep fire phase, sure, the 628 can blast away.
No, not even then. We're not even there yet. It's our turn. It's the Russians' turn. What can we do in the remainder of the Russians' turn?
Post
Oh,
combat.
you can.
Yeah, we're going to advance on that guy, right? Now we have a huge advantage in close combat, not only in value but in terms of ambush.
Oh, okay, so he's still concealed. Oh,
Yeah,
all right.
I just didn't want to conceal him because then you wouldn't see him.
Then nobody would see him.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I guess I didn't understand what the concealed mark was.
Yeah, so
okay. All right, yeah, so fine, yeah.
yeah, so it gives us a greater chance, especially like if there's a -1 leader in there that you know there's a -1 leader. You know, some of that guy would be concealed. I mean, it would be problematic. You'd have to lose. They'd both have to lose concealment. So I mean, it might not be that easy. But if there's a single unit, then you know, you're losing a half squad. He's losing a half squad. But if this guy ambushes him, then he has a chance to kill him. That's a 3. Well, let's just say it's 1-1. You get a -1, and then he continues on because as an ambush, if he kills this guy, he can withdraw. So technically, he can get 2 hexes and move on towards whatever the victor conditions may be. So you sacrificing a unit, especially, right? If we don't have any leaders over here, right? What's this guy going to do for the rest of the game? Let's say there's 3 turns left. Probably not much. You know, he's probably not going to be rallied. Our leader's going to be tied down, you know, finishing what they need to finish. Use this guy to cause a concealment loss. It's the same thing as it's the same thing as moving him in the movement phase and bumping him, and then this guy blasting this guy and breaking him. It's exactly the same thing, except for he's gonna be gone. He'll have to route and he'll be out of it for the rest of the game. But this guy has a chance to come in and finish him off, and then he's gone, which, you know, might lead to something else later the next turn, and then can go on this way. Especially if he's got like a support weapon, or he's got a Panzer Shrek or a medium or a light that might drop down a fire lane you don't like. So you do something like that. But yeah, and so go back over here. In this case, along the same lines, right? Because we're doing this based on the victory conditions. Why would we want to drop down into that crest to take interdiction? What happens when we fail interdiction?
Casualty reduction.
Right. So we die. Let's say this is a casualty victory point scenario. Remember, right? All your decisions should be based upon the victory conditions most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. If this is a CVP where the Germans get points for exiting off the map, or the Germans, if as long as the Germans accrue 20 points and the Russians don't accrue more than 30, yeah, they win. Well, if we capture this guy, that's like a full squad. So it's a half squad, so doubled. At the end of the game, it's going to be 2 victory points. If he casually reduces right here, we only give him 1. If this is the only spot we can go to, this guy may just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then move some sort of stupid German unit up over here that's unconcealed. Well, let me just clone this guy. He can move some guy over here. It's unconcealed. That's in line of sight. Now he's got nowhere to go. Well, he technically does. Let's say he just surrounds him. So now he's got nowhere to go. He surrenders, and then that gets him the victory points there. So you might want to do it to reduce the victory points. Not a lot of games are based on casualty victory points, but some are. And so this might be a way of reducing the capture. Is just hopefully you fail the casualty reduction. Now, of course, if you should happen to pin, that's going to be a problem. You want to fail that morale check. And so especially with conscript units are the ones that you definitely want to probably do that with. Why do you want to do that with conscripts? If that was your key. Why would you rather sacrifice a conscript unit? Let's see, he's a half squad. It's on the backside of that guy. How much more easier it is to fail the form morale check than, like, say, a 628.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
All right. I mean, again, you're not going to rally him. This guy's not rallying. You're going to waste the snake eyes on this guy instead of somebody else, and he's just going to turn into a loser that he is. So, but this, you might have a potential, especially if it's your turn next turn. I mean, that's a 4 to rally. This guy's not rallying if your turn's next. If this is his routing phase and your turn is coming up, just get rid of this guy. Especially if your turn's coming up. You can just get rid of that guy. He's not going to rally in your turn. That gives the German the turn to be able to maneuver to go get him. If it's your turn, you could actually move someone to counter the 248 coming to go get your 628. So it all depends on whose turn's coming up. Sacrifice this piece of garbage because you're not going to rally him. I mean, if you had a 10-3 leader, you're still going to have a rough time rallying that unit, and 10-3 is not going to bother with this guy unless there's nobody else on the map and it's the end game and there are no enemies left on the map. Something like that. I mean, it's just not going to happen. But this guy has value, and this guy could potentially rally as long as your turn's coming up. Again, base it upon your turn. If it's his turn coming up, the same thing happens. He gets surrounded by German units, and he still gets captured. If your turn's coming up, you might consider rallying him. This guy, just get rid of him. If CVP on the game, unless it's super tight, if it's super tight, then you force him. You force the issue. You make him make a mistake by not going into that unit, right? And that's just knowing your opponent. Make him make a decision. Oh, I'd go capture that guy. If he's an adept guy, if he's been doing that the entire game, like if this is like turn 6 of 8, and he's got a couple capture guys anyway, most likely, if he's got some half squads hanging around, most likely he's going to go pick up a free point or two. I mean, unless these guys can be used to possibly get more points somewhere else, then that's kind of what you're looking for. Very subtle with that crest status. Very subtle with that crest status. Do you come out and go directly in there, or maybe just sacrifice that guy? Again, always think of your victory conditions, guys. All the questions that we have in all the games, and any questions you guys see online, like say, hey, should this guy route over here? Should this guy route over there? First question you should ask yourself is, what are the victory conditions? Should the guy route out of the building back to go get rallied? Well, if the enemy needs that building next turn, it may take him a little. He can't move directly into it if you have a broken guy in there. Will that guy die? Probably, but you're going to stop his movement from going into that victory location during the enemy's movement phase, and he's going to be stuck out in the open. So it's going to give your units potentially an opportunity to shoot a guy that he won't be able to run into that stone building or wooden building or bridge or whatever the hell you need him to go into. So leave the guy there. Leave the broken unit on the damn bridge, right?
Yep.
If you could low crawl this guy here, even if it's an 838 that you know that you don't even take an interdiction, just low crawl there. If these guys got to get, say, hey, Germans win if they have, 3 victory points on the other side of the gully. What'd you just do? You just made it. You just had to made him go into the gully. And at that point, if you've got like a, squad with machine guns right here, a couple 628s on the sides, he can't possibly go anywhere. He can't make the dash across the bridge. You just stopped him. And so always think of the victory conditions, especially later in the game, in how, because it's less likely as the game progresses, as units break, it's less likely those units are going to be rallied, simply because you're probably going to be short leaders. The leaders are probably could be broken on themselves, or could be just going after the victory conditions in a different location, and you just simply don't have enough time to get to those broken units. And that's why I said, use the units offensively. Don't route them back 3 hexes. If I'm here broken, you got some Germans, down here. They're pushing across. They want to push across the street for whatever reason. Don't route back there. Just route here. Make them go around you. Make them go into this hellish territory. That's a ton of movement factors. Open ground over here. Maybe you got a guy over here that can blast them into the hedge. Make him go around him. Will he die? Probably. But does it serve a purpose? Him slowing these guys down up, this guy probably does more work than, a couple botched dice rolls when the guy's moving right here. He's 6-2 or something like that, and you just botch the dice roll. He doesn't do anything. But he 100% stops anybody from going in here unless they're berserk or something. You guys know the rules. So that's it. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, Stu, I was going to jump in here. From reading the rules, you cannot be interdicted coming out of the foxhole. Out of the entrench, or out of the crest status, because the rule actually says you're treated when you leave a crest. It's as if you were leaving a foxhole. So it doesn't say anything about movement. So it would be the same. It says leaving.
So if you go into H5, you don't get interdicted because you're not entering another hex, right?
Well, you don't have to. You don't get interdicted coming out of the trench and then going in, right? Where we were talking about before.
Yeah. But if that's the case, does he get interdicted if he goes into H5, if he enters the depression? Because he's leaving that status. He just happens to be going down instead of up.
Would you get interdicted?
Because you're not entering another hex, right?
You're not entering another hex, but you are entering another location.
Is it just subject to FFMO when you're expending movement factors when you're outing? I think it might be.
I'm just, but what I was referring to is if the
you can go from H5 to G5 without interdiction. Yeah, because you add that
there.
you could go directly there.
It says routing you to which enters an open ground hex without low crawl, not location.
Right. So you're not entering the hex; you're already there. So you wouldn't even be interdicted at all, even if you just drop down the crest, because you're not entering that hex. That's a good question. I mean, you still have to go the same direction because that would be your lowest in MF. But I'm just kind of wondering where that situation might come into play. I'm not sure if it would or not. I don't know. Because, like you said, you're not entering this location. You're not entering that. You're not entering another location. You're just there. That's considered the same location. Stacking applies. If you got 3 guys on crest, that's it. The hex is all stacked up. It's not like a bunker.
Yeah, I mean, it does say hex without low crawl. It doesn't say location.
Right. And even if it did say location,
no,
it's the same location. It's still the same location. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's check yield errata here.
I tried.
Okay. No, no change to 10.53.
Hey Stu, I got a simpler question for you.
All right.
Let's say this guy over here, the German is concealed, and it's advance phase for the Russians. Russians advance. Now at this point, the German either says, I'm going to try and withdraw, I'm going to shoot at you, I'm going to sit here and do nothing, right? And then the Russian says, well, I'm going to shoot at you. The German says he's going to sit there and hopefully to tie up all the Russians in melee. Okay? Now, so the Russian shoots, rolls a snake eyes or a 3 or whatever. So that kills the German in close combat. Now the German cannot roll at all and he's gone, correct?
Correct, because he chose to maintain his concealment. He chose to
Okay.
ignore his attack.
I'm glad it was a simple question. Good, thanks. That's
Right.
it.
If you want to attack, then you lose concealment. If you don't want to attack and maintain, because these guys are getting halved in their attack.
Right.
So it considers and it's considered simultaneous. Now, if he ambushed them, that would be a different story.
Right. There was no ambush.
Right. If there's no ambush, then you're either attacking or not. If you are attacking, you're losing concealment.
Okay.
Regardless.
Okay.
You know. So say he didn't ambush you, and you still have your concealment, and he says, "Well, I'm going to attack you, whatever you are." And most of the time, if it's a half squad, even if this guy's, it's 3-1 anyway, you're going to die. Well, you're not necessarily going to die, but it's a good chance you're going to die. In that case, you may either choose to attack. Now, can you withdraw? That's the question. Can you withdraw upon his announcement if either side were not ambushed?
I don't think so. I think somebody needs to ambush to withdraw.
That's like it's like infiltration. Yeah, it's infiltration is the ambush. Withdraw. Well, that's where withdraw. When you say withdraw and you have it in terms of close combat, always think about withdraw from melee. So therefore, melee has to exist, and not just.
Oh.
See, before you at the end of the melee, at the end of close combat round is when you flip this, and now you're in melee.
Right.
And then during the next close combat phase, you may try to attempt to withdraw from melee. There are some dice rolls that allow you to withdraw from melee, but if you don't get those dice rolls, you may not just withdraw from close combat. It has to be a melee already existing.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
But what can this unit do if he's concealed and nothing happens in this? How do you mark this hex at the end of the close combat phase if nothing happens?
Well, it's a melee. Oh, it's well, they're not in melee because the Russians do not know there are actually any units there. I guess they're still in close combat.
Right. In the prep fire phase of the German player turn, what can occur?
The prep fire phase of the German turn. I guess I don't know.
What can the German do here in the prep fire phase? Can he not do anything? Is he can't do shit. What can he do? Can he do anything?
You
I
can
do
attack.
not know.
You can attack at triple point blank.
Yeah, he can drop his concealment and attack at triple point blank fire,
Oh, okay.
which is something you might want to consider sometimes. Especially if you have not a 238, or maybe if you do have a 238. I mean, that's at least 6 firepower. That's better than he's going to get over here. You'd have to do the you'd have to survive. I mean, I'm not sure how you. I mean, it's a chance you can take.
12 plus 3 at the Russians.
All right, like if you had multiple squads in there or something like that, you might consider, if you had multiple units, a couple 238s, 548, whatever. Let's say you had 2 548s and a 238. Maybe you could attack, say, okay, I'm going to keep concealment on this guy, but these other 2 guys are going to lose concealment. They're going to attack you. And the Russian says, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to jump on all over that shit. And he's going to attack these guys at what odds? All these guys are going to attack these guys. What are the odds?
12 to 7, 1 to 1.
What's a half of 7?
3.5.
Add that to 7.
10.5.
How many of these guys got?
12.
12. 3 to 2.
Okay.
3 to 2 is just half again. So it'd be 3 to 2. Let's say nothing happens. How do you mark this hex then? We got one concealed guy. These guys, and they attack back. Let's say we get one of these little bastards. We kill him. How do you mark this hex? How do you mark these units then? If that's all, everyone's still in this location.
Well, I would say that the known units have to be in melee.
Okay, what about the concealed guy?
I'm not sure on that.
Well, he's either melee or close combat.
Well, I guess he'd be melee. I guess he'd be from before you were saying close combat, so I'll say close combat.
All right, but why would he be in close combat? We have to understand why he's in close combat, right?
Right, I do not understand because I just see the melee.
Right. Well, these guys are melee because they're known.
Yeah.
Is this guy subject to the same melee?
No.
Why wouldn't he be?
Well, because there's different factors that would be included, different odds.
What did this guy do? What did this guy keep that these guys did not?
Well, they're going to get shot at by half the firepower.
No. He kept his concealment. If you
Right.
keep your concealment, you're not locked in melee. This guy would be in close combat. So you
They
would
can
mark
move
it.
out whenever they want.
So you mark it like that. So in the next German next player turn, what could you do here? What can these Germans do in the next German player turn?
You
Well,
can
I
leave.
dump them all in melee and kill the Russians,
Well, these guys are melee. They can't do jack shit, right?
but the other Germans can jump into melee.
Well, they could prep fire into it, and that would affect everyone, including their allies. So this would be a 12 firepower. They could move, right, out of melee, or I mean, yeah. And so he could either move or do whatever. As soon as he prep fires into this melee, what happens?
Loses his concealment.
Right, and then what happens?
He goes into melee.
Right, after the resolution of the attack.
Right.
He'd be in melee. So that's
Hmm.
that's one thing you could do. Again, if you want to give him a good shot, then you got a prep fire shot in there. And why would you? In the instance that you might want to consider this is, let's say you don't have any other units around there, right? Right, you don't have any other units around there, and you know 6-4 is still 3-2, right? You got a 3-2 roll, one squad, and you got lucky, you killed one guy. You still have 12 firepower. Now, when these guys reveal, now you got 12-8. Now you got 3-2. Plus, you've got the 5-4-8, which may blast these guys. Why would I want to blast these guys? Well, because my guys have 8 morale.
Yeah.
The Russians have 7 morale. It's more likely that these guys are going to be broken or pinned than my guys. Can my guys break? Absolutely. Absolutely, they can break. But you got 8 morale, they got 7 morale. I'd take that any day of the week. And especially if these guys are Americans, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm taking that sort of shot all the time. And again, if you don't have anybody around, taking a shot to be able to take a shot into this melee, if you wanted to, right? Then this might be an option you might want to try to set up or forego. You don't have to reveal everybody, because if let's say he's got this guy and this guy. Let's say you had 2 guys in there, right? And you say, I'm going to attack with a 2-3-8. He's got 2 4-4-7s. I'm going to attack with a 2-3-8, but not the 5-4-8. And these guys say, well, I want to attack them all. I'm going to attack, my 4-4-7 is going to attack all these guys. Right? What are the odds then?
Oh, I was wandering around. The 5-4-7 is attacking 2 4-4-7s?
No. The 4-4-7s want to attack these guys. This 2-3-8 drops his concealment, says, I'm going to attack in the close combat round. But the 5-4-8, I'm going to keep his concealment. He's going to keep concealment.
Right. Okay. Well.
And he says, well, screw it, I'm going to attack them all. What happens?
It's going to be. Well, I think it's going to be 4-1 against the 2-3-8, and then 1-2 against the 5-4-8.
He could do it a number of ways. He could split his attack. He could attack like this,
Sure.
or he can combine them.
Uh-huh.
If you attack separately, right, then it's 2-1, and this one's what, 1-2, and then this guy's halved. So it'd be 2 to 5. So it'd be 1 to 4, right?
Right. I just go 4-1 against the half squad, but
You would just attack the half squad. Let's say you attack them all, attack both units at the same time. What would the attack be? What would your attack firepower be?
well, it'd be 8 against the 238 and 4 against the 548.
Not if you combine them. If you include the concealed unit in that attack, your attack would be halved.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh. Huh. I didn't know that. Okay.
So that's one option you might want to keep concealed. Maybe you want the 238 concealed. I don't know, whatever you want to do. I don't care. But if you conceal one unit, more likely he's going to attack the other guy, and the same thing happened. This guy's probably going to die. And like I said, if he dies, this guy's still not held in close combat or melee. He's not held in melee. They are in close combat. And if it's your turn coming up, right, you don't want to be the other way around. You don't want the Russian turn coming up. Because if the Russian turn comes up, what's he going to do in prep fire phase? He's going to fire triple point blank fire at your guy with half firepower. So that's going to be a shitload of firepower plus 3. You pretty much, that would be a disaster. That would be a disaster. But if it's your turn as the Germans, you know, hell, you could smoke the hex, you know, and then like smoking does nothing. You'll lose concealment, and then you're screwed. But well, technically you could assault move, but yeah, smoking's going to lose concealment anyway. But you could triple point blank fire or simply assault move out of the hex, and hopefully only take an 8+3. If that's part of the objective of the scenario, you know, take into effect. You always have to take into account the objective of the scenario. When little things like this can occur, if you got a stack of concealed units, and if you need to control this building till the end of the turn, you know, with good order units, are you going to reveal anybody in close combat at that point? You're probably not going to reveal anybody. In the next turn, you're going to assault move out, because once they go to melee, what do they become? Once a unit enters that melee, what do they become?
Non-mobile.
And more importantly, for the victory conditions,
The victory conditions, yeah.
they're not good order. So you would just lose. At this point, the Russian would just win if this were the last turn of the game and it was a melee. The Russians just win the game because you're not good order. If you don't attack and you assault move out in your movement phase, then he has to continue to fight you, and you're still concealed. Does it fight for right here? Does it fight for right here? Don't know. You know, he's only going to get one shot, 8+3, then he's going to jump in close combat with the other guy. You got a 50-50 chance of picking the right guy. He's got to break the one guy with an 8+3, probably not going to happen. And then jump in close combat and ambush him, probably not going to happen. Right? If the control of this building or good order units in this building is the victory conditions, let's say he breaks this unit here and he jumps into close combat here. Are you going to attack as the Germans? And you'd have no more, it's the end of the turn, end of the game. Are you going to attack as the Germans? The Russia's going to attack you. The no ambush, Russia's going to attack you. Say no ambush either side. Right? Is this German unit going to attack these Russian units in the last close combat of the phase where you need good order units in this building? The answer should be,
You're
go ahead, Mark.
still in order, right? I mean, you're still in, you know, the concealed units are still in good order.
Correct.
Right. Whereas, but if the Russians have nobody in the hex to fight, are they still considered in melee? Or are they in good order as well?
These guys are in good order, but the victory conditions are German units are in good order.
Oh, okay.
So if the German unit, if the Russian unit's in that situation where he happens to get lucky or whatever, roll the snake eyes, this guy kills him, and then jumps this guy in close combat, because that's what you're doing. You're shooting one, jumping in the other one, and because he doesn't know what direction you went, he doesn't know which one's which. Because if he breaks one, even if he's broken, then they're not good order, right? So he wants to break the 548, jump on the 238, but there's a 50-50 chance that he has to be able to decide that. But let's say he, whatever, for whatever reason, this is our 238, you know, and he makes this to a close combat phase. Are you retaliating with an attack? You're not attacking here any day of the week. As soon as you attack, you become a member of melee at the end of that turn.
Even if you survive, you're in melee.
Yeah, and therefore not good order.
Right.
Remember what the victory conditions are. Now if it's Russian good order units in there, then you attack and you lock them in melee, making them not good order. But if you're Germans, you're never attacking there, and you don't care. That's the end of the game. You're not even going to withdraw. You're just in the hex, and it's close combat, and he loses. Oops.
Right. So if the Russian attacks the concealed unit, I mean, well, he has to. He moved into close combat. But he can choose not to attack, right?
Right.
I mean, the Russian, right? I mean, as a Russian, you don't have to attack. I mean, in theory. I mean, even if
Never
even
do.
if
Yeah, you
you're
never
not.
do.
But at that point, are they still in melee even at the end of the phase?
No, the Russians are not in melee. They're just in close combat. They're restricted by target selection. If there were another turn, at that point you can move like this German right here, because he's still restricted to target selection limits. He has triple point blank fire opportunities. He can't fire outside that hex. So you can move around him like it's daylight. There's no problem there. Which is another reason. Well, other than the melee thing, but this makes it much more harder. This is a 1-2. He's got a 1-2 against you, and you're still good order. That's the kicker. Again, it's all predicated upon what the victory conditions are, people. It's not predicated upon counters. You can win many, many games with not having one unit on the board, broken or unbroken or whatever. You don't need any units on the board to win the game. You just need to know what the victory conditions are, how to obtain them.
I mean, I'm looking at A11.15. It says melee. If infantry of both sides remain in the same location after all initial CC attacks have been resolved at the end of a CCPH, they are considered to be locked in melee.
Right. But the
So
concealed units are not locked in melee, because the concealed units did not attack.
And the Russians did not attack.
Well, the Russians could attack. Doesn't matter. If the Russians get an effect on this guy, then he'll lose his concealment. That's what we're hoping that he won't get.
Yeah, but my question was, if the Russians don't attack, right? So you're in the hex. The Russians go in. Okay, they don't get ambushed. Whatever. The Germans say, "I'm going to keep concealment." The Russians say, "I'm not attacking you either."
Okay.
Okay. So now at the end of the close combat phase, the Russians are still marked in melee.
No, they're marked for close combat if you have a concealment. If the other guy has a concealment, then it's close combat.
If the other guy has a concealment, then both of you can avoid being in melee at that point.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct. Like if the Russian, well, the Russian kind of wants to, if the Russian just wants to move in and continue moving, right? Let's say he knows this is like a 237 or a leader or whatever, or probably like a 238 or something like that, and that's a single Russian squad, and we got a 238. We got a 238 here instead of 548, right? A 2-to-1's not a guarantee,
Yep.
An 8 is a miss, and if you need this unit over here because you got to stop, kill him, and continue, let's say you have you're a 458 just to give him a little bit more oomph, right? A little more survivability. You could legit enter in close combat, expecting him not to attack because it's at 1-2 because he knows he's going to get screwed, right? Especially if it's that, and then you say, well, okay, I'm not going to attack. That's fine.
Yeah.
And then the other guy says, well, I'm going to attack. It's like, okay, whatever. And even if he does do that, he'll lock you in melee, but it's at 1-2. You're still got survivability, and then at that point you could kill him next time or whatever. But if you anticipate him not attacking you, then just say, okay, if I'm fine, and then next turn, well, it'll be a while maybe, then you can just assault, move out, and at that point he could obviously point blank you, right? But you would still get through his hex. You'd still be on the other side. And if he breaks you, where are you going? You're routing to your victory location where you want to go anyway. So if he breaks you, he's probably helping out. You go 2, go upstairs 3, 4, 5, 6. Hell, you're in W4 if you break.
All right. Yeah. I'm sorry. I just missed the kind of the exception, which is basically half a paragraph in itself.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Any unit which retains its concealment is not locked in melee itself, nor can it hold opposing units in melee.
Right.
So that's why the Russian gets it. But it's also interesting that the last sentence in that paragraph, in that semi-paragraph, upon losing its concealment, such a unit in a melee location is immediately held in melee.
Right.
It's not a time thing. It's not at the end of close combat phase.
No.
They're in melee.
Right.
It's the instant they lose their concealment. If there's a melee going on, they're sucked into it.
Right. So if this 458 were in this hex in close combat, and prep fire comes around, and the German fires in close combat,
Right.
he's going to lose his concealment. After the resolution of that, it's now melee.
Right.
And if either one of these units were to be broken during the interim, or the 458 gets broken, right, because of the attack, it's still a melee. He has to wait until withdraw from melee in the close combat phase versus the rout phase.
Yep.
In contrast, if that were the case, and this 458 would break, he would then rout out in the rout phase because he's not locked in melee.
Yeah.
So, and at that point, come the rout phase, you may choose to just drop concealment. And then what happens, Mark, when you drop concealment and you have this? You're locked in melee.
You're
Yeah, you can
Oh,
just
the-
lock.
uh,
You can
we
prevent
got-
him from. Yeah, you can
German-
prevent him from leaving. And
Right.
then he has to withdraw from melee, and you're gonna get tons of minuses. You're gonna get like -4.
Yeah.
On him on that. So you're just gonna shred him at that point. So your timing of what you do with concealment in melee, or close combat, as the case may be, can be very important. Again, based upon what your objectives are, what the enemy's objectives are, what the strength of the units are in there. It's just not I'm throwing units against the wall. It's a lot more. As you see, gentlemen, it's a lot more than the starter kit close combat. Starter kit close combat, you're going in, it's like Costco. You're not leaving until you're spending $300, you know. And you're not leaving until the job's done. ASL close combat, completely different story. Completely different story. So many things can happen in close combat with concealment, with units not attacking, with snake eyes or 12, or simply withdrawing from melee. Your options in close combat are, to be honest with you, infinitely more than in SK. SK, you have no options. You're there until you're dead. That's all there is to it. In ASL, you have options. You have plenty of options. You could bring other guys in. The other guy could then withdraw. The better unit can withdraw while the other guys are covering. The whole 9 yards. Read, if you haven't done so, for the players that are entering ASL and getting more acquainted with ASL, go to your close combat section, read your close combat, read your withdrawal, and read that paragraph that Mark pointed out. Make sure you read that second part. Never, if you read any rule in ASL, you do not read it to the bottom of that paragraph or bottom of that full section of the 1.01367. Read the entire thing, because those exceptions will be later on. You'll find something else that says something that says, oh, you can't do this. Invariably, the next sentence says, oh, yeah, you can do it if you do this. Invariably. I mean,
Yeah.
Half the rule book, if you just delete all the exceptions in the rule book, it'd be about 5 pages. Yeah, it'd be starter kit.
Yeah.
It'd be starter kit. But close combat's real huge, gentlemen, and lots of that's why you gotta, as long as like say you always have the tools available to you. The tools are in your array of options that you have to you based on your knowledge of the close combat. Then you can make cleaner decisions, more sound decisions, or trickier stuff that your opponent might not consider. Like you might advance a concealed unit in there. The big one is, right, the classic one is you move a concealed unit in here. Let's say you got like a -2 leader or something like that. Let's say you got a bunch of shit in here. You got a -2 leader and let's say 2 squads. I'll put the squad over here. Let's assume the 2 3/8 of -2 leader. I don't care. So you got a -2 leader, 2 squads, and this guy says, I'm gonna get my ass get in close combat. You jump into close combat. What's your ambush dice roll modifier? If I have a -2 leader, let me get one.
2 leader and you're concealed, it's already -4, isn't it?
Right, -2 leader and so -4. So what are their chances of ambushing this guy?
Pretty darn good.
Right. A minus for my dice roll.
Uh,
Boom.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can be ambushed.
Right. I roll a 4, and
yeah.
Mark rolls his 5.
Right.
Easy
Yeah.
ambush. So what happens when I ambush him?
Yeah. Yeah.
What can I do when I ambush him? I can do a couple things.
Well, since you moved in there, you're probably moving in there to. Well, I mean, you could, in theory, just slip right by him, I suppose.
Right. If I ambush him,
Yeah.
then I could withdraw from ambush immediately and then go to my position in R4 if that's what my purpose was anyway. Let's say he needed to exit guys off the board, and I got a guy here, and he's got, like a 4-4-7 that's going to, it's right here. And let's say this is all the same level for whatever reason, or let's say I've got LOS to wherever he needs to be, and he needs to move into this location. He has to exit off that specific spot, and that's the same level as I am, right? Then if I advance to this location, ambush him, I can withdraw to that location because ambush or withdraw, and then my objective is to stop this unit. Another thing I could do is I could attack this unit with the ambush. If I kill him, I could do this exact same thing, withdraw. But if I screw up and roll 10 or 11 or whatever the case may be, it's only going to be 2 to 1 -3. That's a 10. I mean, it's 11 or 12. That's easily missable. I mean, I think John's experienced that. Some crazy ass ambushes. I think some of those games with Steve where, you got some crazy ambush rolls going on there, and you can get lucky. But so you might not want to attack there because you could get stuck. This way, it's 100% guaranteed. Well, not guaranteed. You'd have to ambush him. But that way, your objective is this guy, not killing this guy. So again.
Well, but you can still, but you can ambush withdraw even afterwards, provided you survive.
And now he has, yeah. Oh, well, yeah. That's true.
Right. I mean, you'd be stripped of concealment because you attacked. Let's say, obviously, you'd be stripped of concealment because you attacked and you gapped the roll. But then your opponent is +1 because he was ambushed.
Yeah. But again, then you would lose concealment, right?
Well, you'd lose concealment immediately. I mean, if you decide to attack, then you decide to take the option of attack,
right,
and then try to leave. But so let's say you gap the roll. Right. So the instant you decide to attack, yep, you've lost concealment. Okay, but if you fail to eliminate him and he fails to eliminate you because you ambushed him, you can still leave the hex afterwards, right?
So we're here. What problem does that give us a little bit next turn? It's the Russian's turn because
you're unconcealed, right? You're unconcealed right now.
Right, and the Russian's got to leave. What's he going to fire at us with?
8 instead of 4.
8 firepower +3 instead of 4 +3. 4 +3 is going to bounce off of us.
Yeah.
So that's why you might want to keep your concealment, because the 4 +3 is almost guaranteed you're going to be unscathed. He has to roll a 3 for a normal morale check. That's, I mean, if he rolls a 3 and we get a normal morale check, guess what? Are we going to fail that? Probably not.
Probably not, but at least you get.
Yeah. We got hopefully we'll roll a 9, and then we'll roll some 10s beyond that, or some 9s on top of that to take a shot this way. I mean, it's possible you could roll that, but an 8 +3, I mean, a 5 is a normal morale check. A 4 is a 1 morale check. People roll 4s all the time, and that's a 1 morale check, and that's not looking fun for these guys. That could reduce our 12 firepower -3 to a 4, -1 if the assault moves advanced phase. Giant difference in what you need to do. Again, based upon this is a simple example of a victory condition. If his condition is to get off, then you need to get there, then that's the option we're going to take. If your condition is to kill all units in this location, and it's only his last half turn, you might want to jump this guy in close combat and try to kill him. You'll have 2 close combats. I mean, so, but yeah, I mean, it's not different. It's a couple pages of rules. I think 1 or 2 full pages of rules of close combat. Read that. You're going to be reading that for the rest of your ASL career, period. That's all there's to it. So get used to it. Just read it, understand one little section, how to ambush withdraw, and that's it. Just read that section today. Next section, do, concealment in close combat. Read that 15 times, and that way, and then eventually you'll have all the pieces, and then you just kind of link them together later on, and then you figure out these little tactics after that. That you don't get to learn any tactics in the game, in the rulebook. You know, you're just going to learn example. There's a couple examples. They don't show any tactics. They don't have game situations, anything like that. You know, you're just going to have to look at what options you have. As long as you know what options you have, then you have to be able to tie those together. And again, that's the adage of, you know, playing better players, you learn to play SL. Well, as long as you understand what they're doing, that would occur. Right? If you don't understand that, you know, he could jump into close combat and run out and do this, that, and the other, you're going to be surprised by it. But you probably won't remember it. I mean, you could remember it, but will you use it? You know what I'm saying? And so as long as you're on the ball with most of it, then you'll be tying more and more little things together in for your ambush. I mean, first things first, concealment and ambush helps the ambush. I mean, if you know anything, that's a great tool to have. Right? And then the next option, once you're in that hex, I have the option to keep my concealment. So what does that do for me? Figure that out. Okay, why would I want to do that? Then think of a situation where you might want to do that. You know, I get to move next hex. If it's my turn, I get to move out of the hex. And lo and behold, I move around. You know? And guess what? What happens when you're in close combat and he's stacked on top of you, and this bad boy comes over here and blasts that hex?
Oh, he can. Right. He doesn't affect everybody. He just affects the enemy.
Exactly.
Right.
He will not affect the Russian unit because they are not in melee.
Yeah.
Only the Germans. All right. So that's another thing you might want to consider. But then, if all these guys break, then you might attack them. Maybe get a kill too. You know, depending on what your desires and needs are. Right. You can bring a couple points. So that's another example, you know. And those little things you're not going to learn one time. You're not going to learn one read through. The next game, you're not going to learn all those techniques and those situations may never come up for 5 or 6 games. And that's why, you know, going back to the close combat rules, look at your scenario. You know, if you look at a scenario and look like close in fighting, you know, scenario 1, SK1, right? You're going to be close combat and, you know, highly likely in that game. You better know your close combat rules, you know, and that's just at SK level. You know you're going to experience close combat in those particular scenarios, you know. And then S6, not S6, but S8, I think the one where you have to exit the map, you might not have close combat because the Americans really don't want to engage in close combat. They just want to get past you. So the likelihood of close combat is going to be reduced in that particular scenario. Do you have to be sharp on close combat in those particular games? Probably not. But, you know, one might occur somewhere if something weird happens. But the most likely your plan may not involve a lot of close combat. If your plan involves a lot of close combat, you know, go back, reread it. Simple as that. Because there's always something you're going to miss or forget. It's like, oh, shit, you know, I can withdraw. I keep my concealment. And you could split them. You get 3 squads in there. Have 2 keep and 1 not. Maybe he takes the bait on the 1. You know, you never know. It depends on what he's got. You know, most guys will take the one that want the kill. You know, nothing's wrong with that. They want the kill. They want to reduce your force. But then maybe that gives you an opportunity to move 2 squads through that location by sacrificing 1 instead of having all 3 stuck in that hex for 2 turns. You know, and again, when you go through that hex, just like we had over here, we exited the hex. We know we're going to take a shot here. You know, even if it's a stack of units right here. And even if the guy had a medium machine gun or 2 units, right? Is he going to kill these guys at a 16 firepower even? You know, he'd have to roll a 3 for a KIA. Could he do that? Sure. Most likely he'll roll like a 5 through a 9. Like a 2 morale check. And again, let's say they all break. They're over here. And guess what he did the prep fire phase? He prepped.
Well, yeah.
He prepped. Would these guys break? Will he be able to pursue them? No.
Yeah.
He can't. This guy can't get to him. He just broke all your guys there. He's all happy. He's all, yeah, I'm kicking your ass. And you're just laughing at him because all the rest of his units are like over here fighting. It's like, fine, I'm just going to boom, route, go up, walk over, go this way, 'cause especially if you have exit or some bullshit like that. And then whose turn is it next turn?
Yeah, it's the Germans.
Germans.
They've got a decent chance of rallying. The leader's got.
Yeah.
Well, a leader would need a 5.
Yeah, need a 5. Or if the leader didn't break and everyone else did, then even better. But the leader will need a 5 in the German turn. And then what will he need it next turn? Because he can't see him.
Yeah, there'll be in a 9. Yeah, right. 9 to rally the leader, and then
9 3 11s. 9 and 3 11s. In the German turn, where he's going to be moving.
Yep.
Or actually in the Russian turn, where he won't be moving, but this guy can't do anything. He's not going to come up here. You're going to get vanquished. He honestly can't do it. He'd have to come around here and hopefully get an open shot or some shit. He's not going to be able to get over them. And then you just skid out off the board. Or whatever. Again, you know, if your objective is to go that way, and if there's a route path that you could use to blow up that hill, then do it. We don't care if we break. He gets a free movement phase. You know, make sure he doesn't have a lot of half tracks around because he's just going to surround you. But again, that's situational, right? Knowing the situation, knowing what he could do, and knowing how you can use your routing, especially in this case, you absolutely, and if the situation presents itself, you absolutely don't care if you break right there. You want him to fire. You know, you might want him to fire, because if he skulks, right? If he skulks here and then advances here, then he'll get an A+. You know, if you're going full movement, he's going to get A+2 right there. Not a bad shot. And if you break there, you know, then he can move because he defensive fired. You know, his turn's coming up. You break. You say you're right up here, then he can go 1, 2, 3, 4 upstairs, and then advance and be right on top of you. And this guy go 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say 5, 6, CXing. You know, CXing. I mean, he won't. He can't even route here. And well, he might not be right there, but you see what I'm saying? See how it just works out, just the differences on who's firing when.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it just, you know, he could skulk back and then take the 9-2 on when he's moving, have a better chance. Or because the 9-2 doesn't want to fire, based on the VC, if this guy needs to be over here, doesn't necessarily want to fire there. You know, so again, the obvious answer probably a lot of times in ASL is not the correct answer. The obvious move, say, okay, this is the obvious move. Why should I not take this move? Is there a better move that I can do which would get me slightly ahead? You know, is there something else that could get me more slightly ahead? Could I be in a better position by not firing? You know, ask yourself that. Sometimes there isn't. Say, oh, that's the best shot. Maybe fire one guy. You know, firing one guy at 8 even wouldn't be a bad shot. Why would you bother 16? Why would you not fire both guys? That's a 16 chart. Stu, you're an idiot. I can roll 3 and kill him. 7's a 2 morale check. Why would I fire only one guy? And which guy would I fire? Let me ask you that.
What now? Which is it? What, the Russian player turn?
Russian player prep fire phase. Russian player turn prep fire phase. Why would I fire one unit, and which guy would I fire? Because what am I going to do with the other unit? If I'm only firing one unit, what am I going to do with the other unit?
Well, you're going to move him.
I'm going to move him. So right then and there, which one am I going to move? Should be pretty obvious.
Well, my guess is I mean, if you're moving to possibly like, hoping that the whole stack's going to break or something like that, and you want to try to cut off route paths, you probably want to move. You probably want to move the 458 because he has a greater chance of surviving any fire that might be coming in this direction.
Absolutely. The 447 is going to be the one firing because the morale doesn't help in firing, and the 458's moving. You know, if this guy's going to be used to try and get behind this guy, if anybody breaks, if the 9-2 doesn't break, you're probably not getting very far, to be honest with you. Because even if you bypass this way in CX and try to get around this way, even if he has the 238 left over, that's a 2-4. That's pretty stupid. That's a 5 for kill. So, but if the 9-2 breaks, and like say one of the 548s break, that's a 6-2. That's semi-survivable. That's essentially going to be a 1 morale check for this guy. And then he can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up here, you know, if the case may be. And then where would you have to route? If you were there and anybody of these guys break, what happens? Anybody of these guys break, especially the 9-2. Let's say these guys broke. And 548 survives. And you get here. What happens here, gentlemen?
Well, let's see. Once you're there, then the German units, German units have to route. They're going to have to route that way. That's the only place they can go. And since this is advanced squad leader and not SK, because the only way they could avoid interdiction is low crawl, therefore they must surrender.
Right. You just killed 3 units, essentially. You could either no quarter them, or if it's a casualty victory points, guess what? You just captured 6 points for that guy on top. This 6, 10, that's a 12-point stack right there. I don't know of too many victory point scenarios that don't involve like 80 units that need more than probably 20 victory points. So right then and there, you just pop most of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and hell, at that point, you could follow up and you probably don't want to throw this guy in close combat, but you could capture those. Now, who captures them? Can it only be the interdictor or anybody?
It's anybody who's adjacent.
Anybody's adjacent. So this CX guy could actually capture them, even though he can't interdict. He could be the guard.
Yeah.
So, but again, breaking at 8 even, that could break those units. If you fire 16, they break. What do? They run away. If you fire 8 even, and you get 1 or 2 units to break, hopefully they'll have 1, 4, 5, 4, 8, and the 9-2, then, risk versus reward. If I get here, he loses the 9-2 leader in a full squad. That's well worth this guy just breaking. Let's say he moves here and he gets a 4-2 and he breaks. Big deal. Okay, whatever. He's not coming back this way. But we had an opportunity to kill 2 units. The risk versus reward at that point exceeds anything else. Just direct him where you want to route. He can't go here. He can't go S4. That gives him 1 spot to go to is T3, and that's interdicted. So you don't have to kill them. You don't have to roll your 3 for a KIA. You just got to break them and have one other guy get right there. That's it. And eight's a good chart. I don't care what you're talking about. 8's a good chart. One raw check. That means a 9-2 needs a 8. If the 9-2 pins, that's almost just as good, right? Because now we can add his -2 on any shots, on any morale checks, anything like that. And we have options later on in the turn. So it's just a good idea when you try to perform something like this. This is how you eliminate units without actually having to roll KAs, because you're not really going to roll KAs, right? You're really not, unless he makes a giant mistake. You only have so many -2 leaders running around. Anyway, that's all for that stupid close combat thing. But that's all part of now. At this point we can go into arguments of okay, now they surrender. Do we jump to close combat with this guy? Well, that's like about a 2-hour talk right there. So we won't go into that. So because that deals with prisoners. So Mark, you had some questions. Sorry about that.
Well, yeah, but it's actually kind of getting late here, so.
Yeah, 6:40 here. Yeah.
Yeah, 9:40 here. I don't know. I suppose we could try. Yeah, you have to dumb down because it's going to be starting.
Yeah. I'll let you guys answer the next one.
All right, hold on a second. Let me. All right, I'm going to close the game here. No, I'm going to open up mine. I don't know why it would have popped up over there. Okay. Let me see. Well, I just have to kind of, not too bad. Let me just get to where I want to go here.
It's funny showing your counters on the old board if you don't resync. So that's cool. Yeah, that's a cool one.
Oh yeah. You see everything, but yeah.
I don't know if it would do that before in previous versions. I don't know. It's kind of weird. All right, you're flying along. Oh wow. this looks intense.
Let's see, advance. All right, looks like fire. All right, route phase. All right, here we go. Okay, if everybody wants to sync to me, now's a good time.
Bunch of guys. Holy crap.
All right, so this is the first scenario in the bonus pack 2, 4 hours more. Japanese versus Chinese. You will notice SK concealment markers around.
Mm.
What was interesting and what I kind of missed. I'm the Chinese in this scenario, and I ended up missing like a number of things. But I wanted to bring this up kind of for the rules. Okay, so right now, all right, so we're going to the advanced phase. All right, so boom, that stack moves there. Okay, now, okay, so in SK there is kind of the concept of wall advantage. Okay, so the hedge rules themselves are, you find them, they are there's like a pull-out page in, I think, expansion pack 1 possibly, or expansion pack 2 again. Expansion pack 1. It also used to be part of the old Beyond the Beaches,
Right.
Where they included, right. So this is basically literally like a reprint of those rules. Okay, and if you have your hedge rules on the left side, there's basically a discussion of the hedge rules, and so basically it says, if good order units of both sides are adjacent to a hedge hex side, only the side with the advantage receives TEM from the adjacent enemy on the other side. The first good order unit to share a hedge hex side with no good order enemy unit on the other side gains the advantage. Okay, so I kind of missed this, and it kind of has some disastrous consequences. So although there is no wall advantage counter in the starter kit mix,
Right.
okay, in theory you can pull that down. Obviously, there's Basil, you can pull down whatever you want. Okay.
Right.
Now, let me see. So let's see. All right. So we have a close combat, hand-to-hand melee, so turn 5. Okay.
Nice.
So now the problem is at this particular point, I didn't kind of realize that I had wall advantage. Okay. So.
Oh. Okay. I got
right. Well, what I immediately do is I back up. Okay. So I say, oh great, I'm just going to back up. Okay. Now, I guess my real question now is, okay, because I did that, okay, now the that side's units, okay, if we continue reading the SK rules, that side units will then retain the advantage until the enemy steals the advantage by having the only good order unit to share that hex side. Okay, so I would assume then at this moment, now these guys have the wall.
Yep. That
Okay,
would be agreeable.
right.
Yeah, because he's the only person that has adjacent to that hex side, and he's the good order unit, and no other units are next side. Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so I think Ben actually kind of realized this. Kudos to Ben. And then obviously that just caused even more trouble for me at the precise. But my question is what about from here to here?
Are they adjacent?
Right. I mean, okay. So if good order are adjacent to a hedge hex side, okay. But do we say that hedge hex side?
Are they adjacent to one another?
Okay, so it says good order are both sides are adjacent to a hedge. Only the side with the advantage receives the TEM from the adjacent enemy on the other side, from the adjacent enemy on the other side.
Right.
So
Right.
I guess in this case, in ASL, would the same thing happen?
Back it up to where the Chinese unit was in
Okay,
T7.
right. Oh, of
And then
course.
this will answer your question as long as some other
All right.
things.
So right at this moment, fine. I have wall advantage. Everybody knows that. Although I didn't at the time.
Okay,
So
let's say the prep fire phase.
Yeah.
This unit prep fires on that stack.
Yeah.
What's the TEM?
The TEM on this guy would be 0 because
Correct.
he has wall advantage.
Correct. Based upon your rules, based upon those SK rules, if this unit fires on that stack, what's the TEM?
It's also good order units are adjacent. Only the side with the advantage receives TEM. The first good order unit to share ahead. So this guy always fires still at +1.
Correct, because these two units are not adjacent.
Okay.
But this guy alone has the advantage of those units. This guy's going to be the same +1. This guy's going to be the same +1, and so on and so forth. Anywhere this guy would normally receive the wall T or the wall hedge TEM, he would receive it even if the enemy has advantage. He only this unit, and that's why he marked that unit versus
versus anybody else.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Right. Everybody else firing, it's still right. So even in ASL, like this guy and this guy, neither technically has wall advantage over the other. They both get the +1 all
Correct.
the time.
Correct, because they're not adjacent to one another. Yes.
Okay, all right. So it's the fact that they're adjacent to each other is what kind of triggers it.
Yeah, one guy's looking over the wall. If both of you are looking over the wall, you're kissing each other.
Right.
So one guy's looking over the wall, the other guys are probably 15, 20 feet away behind like some sort of grass or wall or, on the other side of the road or some bullshit like that. Hopefully in a gully or something. I don't know, stand in the open. I don't know. I'd hate to be stuck out in the open. But yeah, that's what it represents is these guys are represented to be all essentially on the wall, just like the counter looks like, right? Their guys are just guarding the wall.
Yeah.
And the other guy, they have the advantage of that until that advantage is gone. And when you jump away over here,
right,
and then
from that instant, then the other guy, right? But the instant you do it, that guy immediately claims wall advantage, and that's it.
right. So take into consideration, even in SK, this guy has a wall advantage. If you don't want this guy to get wall advantage, what could you do?
You move the other guy in first.
Yeah, this guy moves first.
Right.
Because you'd still +1 TEM because you have the wall advantage. If you moved out and he moved in, does he could keep concealment?
No, because it's open ground at that moment. The instant he gets wall advantage, that's open ground.
Because he doesn't have the TEM, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where the big movement is.
Okay, so it's all right. So it's adjacency, and that's kind of the same concept even in ASL, right? Because this is what confused me was this kind of this firing along a hex side sort of thing.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not a wall advantage, right? Neither side can gain wall advantage over the other. You both get the +1, and that's just it.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, it's big. Wall advantage can be confusing a lot of times. So
well, I find it's one of those like sections of the rules where my eyes just glaze over. I can't make any sense. It's just one of those sections where it's like 3 pages, and it's like, how can it possibly be this complicated?
Right. What I find as a refresher, say you go through them and so on and so forth, I still can't recite when you gain wall advantage. I always have to look at that. But what I usually do is I think their examples are really pretty good. Just reread the examples because you probably know the wall advantage rules. You've read them a couple times. Just go over some of the examples, and that will refresh in your mind how all those rules kind of connect together.
Coalesce.
And a lot of times they might have some timing examples of when one guy loses it, the other guy gained. Like if you break it, if all these guys, well, they're not going to break because they're Japanese. But if these guys were broken and they had wall advantage, then these guys can immediately gain it because now though they are no longer in good order.
Right. Yeah,
right?
yeah. So it
And so,
immediately flips the instant
yeah.
that happens.
And
Right.
so,
Yep.
for the Japanese, that instance, right? Tactically, knowing that the Japanese are probably going to remain in good order for an extended period of time, it's hard to get the Japanese off the wall. It's hard to get them off a wall.
Yeah,
So,
for precisely that reason. Yep.
right.
Yeah.
And so,
But as I said, that's exactly what I ended up doing here, and it's like the instant that happened, right, and I think Ben, to his credit, caught that and said, "Oh well, now I've immediately got wall advantage."
Yep. Yep.
And it's like, oh well, that just made this bad situation even worse. And yeah, he eventually broke through and just he ended up The goal was to capture this building. And,
yeah.
and
Why do you let Ben play the Japanese? He could stack and not have any ill effects.
Yeah, well, that's, he plays the Axis. He always plays the Axis.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. Yeah.
So
that's funny.
there's no randomness with Ben. It's who's the Axis, he plays them. So
That's okay. You need to play some Italian scenarios then.
yeah, there you go. That's right. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, that's funny.
Those are always fun. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good question. That's
Unfortunately, there aren't that many SK Italian scenarios.
Yeah, that's true.
Except for the S47, 48, which are my death scenarios.
Oh yeah.
I end them with a passion. So,
that's pretty rough.
So, I refuse to play those two anymore. So,
ouch.
They're about the only two scenarios I think I find I just absolutely will refuse to play from now on.
Oh my goodness.
Damn them. Yeah. So, but okay, great. Okay, I think for me, I think the biggest problem was just I couldn't kind of figure out like this. And it's like, the answer is simple. They're not adjacent, therefore neither has wall advantage over the other.
Right.
So that solved a whole lot of problems for me, both in SK and ASL. So thank you very much.
Yeah, that works out well.
Yep. Cool. All right, great.
Yeah. And your guy here, right? You'll see some guys. Do you need to put that wall advantage counter on that unit in S7 if nobody else is around him?
If nobody else is around him, no.
Yeah, I would in terms of clarity of what's on the map, I prefer not to, knowing that he will gain wall advantage automatically because there's no terrain in that hex. So he won't.
No terrain, right? So the instant somebody does move adjacent, then you slap the wall advantage.
Exactly. And sometimes you might not want to have that on there anyway. Sometimes you want to forfeit it, especially if these guys are dummies, they can't obtain wall advantage. So it's like, well, I'm not going to have wall advantage because it should be in the open. You could trick him and say, I forgot.
Right. So obviously in SK, you don't have dummy stats.
Right.
So there's an infantry unit there. So they gain wall advantage anyway. Okay.
Right.
But in ASL, dummy stacks can't gain wall advantage.
Right. It's not good order. It's not a unit.
I thought dummy stacks were still considered good order.
Well, what's he going to prevent? Right. He's a wall advantage, but you can bluff it
because it's still an infantry unit.
He's not an infantry unit. It's just a unit. Dummies are not infantry units. They don't have firepower. They don't have any other stuff. It's a little weird thing. So you might want to say, okay, I'm going to drop wall advantage then, and give you wall advantage for whatever reason. I mean, he may fire anyway and waste his shot, but you could try and trick him with dummies, and that's what it is. Most of the time, everyone will keep it, right? Most of the time. But that if you play the same guy, I mean, if you play Ben a lot. And if you got dummy units, if he goes into ASL or whatever the case may be, and if you play the same opponents, you might want to try and switch that up a little bit in doing like the little tricky stuff in. Some guys may not know that particular rules, like your wall advantage dropping back over here. They may not know that sort of thing. So you may not be pulling anything on them. And so therefore your advantage of doing that, it doesn't exist because he doesn't realize what you're doing. Or whatever the case may be, So, but if you play the same opponent, you kind of knows each other's style, and if you just play your style a little differently, you could catch him because sometimes you need that you need that edge against similar opponents.
Did you say I can put a wall advantage on a dummy stack legally?
Yeah,
no.
You can, but you're not going to be able to maintain it.
Right. No, just as a fool them stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there, like I said, Mark says there are no dummies in SK. So.
Right.
But in ASL, most of your dummies are going to be on. It's a little trickier to kind of get away with it.
All right. So hold on a moment. I'm sorry. Let's assume this guy is we're in ASL and that is a dummy stack.
Right.
Just for purposes. Okay. So this guy moves here, and you can claim wall advantage.
Yeah, you could. I don't think you can as a dummy. You have to kind of reveal somebody.
A
But your
unit may
dummy,
claim
but
all advantage over a same level, right? If it is an armed, well, armed. Of course, that's a question.
right.
I guess that's the question. Yeah, I mean, is a dummy stack armed?
Right. But what you could do is you could have this dummy stack with wall advantage, and what does that do to the Japanese player? That might make him more hesitant entering these locations.
Any personnel unit is armed unless currently represented by an unarmed counter.
Is a dummy a personnel unit?
Well, it's a unit according to the definition. A unit is any game piece or counter with its own MF MP allotment and normally capable of movement. Infantry, cavalry, dummy stacks, and vehicles are all different types of units.
Units, but they're not personnel. Personnel are all single man counter and multi man counters, including those mounted as cavalry.
But a unit doesn't say a personnel unit. It says
Right.
A unit. They
Right.
claim wall advantage over a same if it is armed, unbroken ground level unit, which is not a vehicle, is not column convoy, is not fortified, bridge, pillbox, beneath entrenchment above, or location containing a non-hidden, non-prisoner enemy unit.
Right.
Units.
And an armed unit, and then you have to look at definition of armed, right? So an armed unit is any personnel unit.
Anybody is armed unless they're represented by an unarmed counter.
Anybody's armed if it's a personnel unit. You have to be a personnel to be armed.
Oh, that's interesting. Any person. Oh, that is interesting. Yeah, you're right. Yep. Any personnel unit. Yep. And a personnel unit
Is a single man counter, multi man counter.
all single man and multi man counters. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow, boy, there you go. That's that's wonderful.
Yeah. But you could wall advantage this guy, right? Like I say, to prevent.
Now you can't. But now you're not armed.
Right, but you can't.
Unit is not armed.
But you can't maintain it, right? You can't maintain the wall advantage status. If he happens to move adjacent to you, you can't keep it. But what are you doing here? You're preventing.
Right, but the point is I can't even claim it if he moves adjacent. So if he moves here, I can't claim it because
Correct.
I'm not a personnel unit.
Correct.
Right.
You can't
so
claim it over him.
He immediately knows that's a dummy unit.
It's likely that he might know it's a dummy unit.
Well, of course, you don't have to. I guess you don't have to claim wall advantage.
Right. Or you could just forfeit. it.
Right.
Right. Because
You
this
just
could be.
don't
I mean, this could be a
claim
5.
wall advantage.
This could be a 5-3-7, right?
Right.
And let's say you do that maneuver. You see, you give him wall advantage.
Yep.
And he says, "Well, shit, that's a dummy unit," and he fires on these guys instead of the advanced fire phase.
Yeah.
Right. Or defensive fire phase, then you fire point blank, or he just advances in that location, thinking you're a dummy.
Okay. Right.
So
okay, but,
I mean,
so,
you're
right,
gripping it, right? You're taking chances. Yeah. This is one of the cases where you're strictly in open ground, but again, you still have half firepower, and you're routing back to the victory objective, which he may not be able to get to. But I mean, this situation, it might not be your best choice, but
Yeah, no, but it's just interesting that you said, right? It's just interesting that you have to really go through the definition pretty darn carefully.
yeah, you just backtrack. Yeah,
Armed ends up being the problem.
right. Because the units, there are units, right, which can move.
Yeah.
Right. And then you go back and forth, and again, that's the problem that I had in Cut the Road to Marseille, is they were jumping around by using German multi-man single-man counters, and then the next sentence it says any unit that sees an enemy unit. Well, a dummy is a unit, and so therefore a dummy would qualify in the second sentence, but not in the first sentence because they are they're not single-man or multi-man counters. That's why, with the discussion we had last week, that's why I had difficulty with that scenario special rule, because I don't know if the author was using them interchangeably or on purpose by defining one as a single man multi-man counter and the other one as any German unit.
Right.
So it's I don't know. I didn't get the answer, but based upon the definitions that we looked up here, are armed unit, personnel unit, and that's what you do. If it doesn't make any sense, okay, it says personnel unit. What does personnel mean? They go boom. And sometimes personnel units, sometimes the definitions of a particular, like an infantry unit, is not a passenger, rider, or crew. It may be a squad, but a passenger, rider, crew is not an infantry unit. And so if a passenger, rider, or crew fires, can he subsequent first fire? No, because only infantry units can subscript for fire. If you have a passenger like on a half track
Yeah. Okay.
and they shoot, they fire, 6.58, 9-2 liter, going with the LMG on the German half track, they get one shot. Period.
Huh. Interesting. Yep.
They get
Okay,
one
yep.
shot. Now if they're on the ground, guess what? Now they're personnel. Now they're infantry units. Now
Right.
they get subscript for fire.
Okay. Huh. Well, all right. Well, that's good to know. I suppose.
So if you see those guys in half tracks or trucks, bait him with one shot and then charge him with everyone else, he's going to be dead. But yeah, again, like let's say, just a little, and and that's where you just use whatever resource you have, whether it's the electronic rule book or whatever. Just look at your index and glossary. Look at your definitions. Look at the index, and then look, even if it doesn't give you a good definition, like advanced phase, what does that mean? It gives you a reference. It goes directly to it, and then therefore you could possibly Mark, you get the one-liners in there, and
Sure,
then
yeah.
and then there's where your answer would be. But just definitely use. I mean, I don't even look at the chapter dividers anymore. I just look at my concept, what I'm looking at, like ammunition shortage. I don't try to find it. I just look at the index, boom, go to advanced fate, boom, because it will have a lot of sub context. For area fire, it has like 15 different sections where area fire is described, and you might find an interesting section that you might want to pick up on.
Yeah.
But yeah, very very subtle little things here and there, and again, just take time, and that's why I get frustrated with players that don't necessarily want to access the rules during a game, because you might miss something like this. I mean, after the game, I'm not gonna, to be honest with you, and I'm just reading casually. I'm not gonna read right after a game. Maybe one thing that I screwed up, but if it's only one thing, then you're gonna research that during the game, and most likely, if you've got a lot of walls, like I said, if you got a lot of walls, a lot of close combat, check those sections out before the time. If you know you're going to be defending behind walls, refresh yourself on just read the examples of wall advantage. You don't have to read the whole sections. Nobody likes to read the rules, but read the examples. Examples are a little bit more human. And then say, oh, he could do this and he causes loss. And oh, the guy in the entrenchment behind the wall, I can't see unless I'm adjacent. Oh, these little things are nice. You might be able to do something with that. And those are quick refreshers.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
But as I said, this was kind of interesting because this was just kind of like the real first scenario that really kind of brought out kind of like wall advantage suddenly being like really important,
Yeah, that's right.
Because there aren't that many scenarios. Although I guess a lot of the bonus pack 2 scenarios I think have these hedges in them, and a number of the a number of these have the hedges in them. So it is certainly something to, if you're going to be playing a lot of the bonus pack 2 scenarios, you definitely want to find that page in in expansion pack 1 and make sure you know it. So
no, it doesn't have that rules in the expansion pack 2. Is expansion pack 1 a prerequisite?
Unfortunately they did not put the hedge rule page in bonus pack 2. At least I don't think they did. Yeah. I usually scan everything.
Yeah, it's not standalone anyway, right? So it's not standalone, so that makes sense. Yeah.
Right, it's not standalone in that sense, right? But still, it's like, look, it was an extra, 20 cents.
They could just throw it in the SK4 rulebook online.
I think you could have spared it.
They could do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's available as a download from the MMP website.
Oh, it is?
Okay, pages? Okay, yeah. And then I guess from their standpoint.
Okay,
right,
cool.
But again, may not be one of those things that people would look up. But then again, hey,
Yeah, I didn't even know that. Yeah, I didn't even know
if
that.
you're playing ASL, you should download any rules pages you find, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of
That's
one of
pretty
those
cool.
things.
So that's a big one. Yeah, it's a huge one, especially since like you say, it's an SK. They're the newest SK stuff are including hedges and stuff, things like that.
Yeah.
And it's very important. It really changes a lot of things, and so it's important to find that information. Thanks for pointing that out, John. That we
Yeah. So thanks. Yeah. So, but there you go. Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up because I was like, that really nailed me. So so it's good to keep that in the back of your head, especially for a lot of these scenarios in bonus pack 2.
You still fighting this one here?
No. I ended up losing this one. Yeah. No, I mean, it was just two things. It was I had like all my Chinese kind of in here, which was a big mistake. He burst through the gate here and just kind of just boom, 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 just came right down this way.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's like, as you're the Chinese, you definitely want to put a couple speed bumps on this side.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't,
Yeah,
and he just
interesting.
got right in here, and it's just he just moved right in, and the Chinese, as you said, the Japanese, since they don't break, fine, you lose a half squad crossing the street, well, fine, you're over here now,
Yeah. That's pretty
fine,
tough.
you strike, you strike, woohoo, okay, you still end up having a lot, and there's a 10-2 leader in that stack too.
Yeah,
so
that's a big boy.
that's a big boy, yeah.
That's
so,
a big boy there. You don't
you
see
know,
many of
so-
those.
yeah, so it ends up being, you definitely want to kind of throw up the speed bumps, and that sort of thing. So I mean, I wasn't so sure about the scenario, but it actually ended up being kind of an interesting one. So
Cool.
it's the first scenario in bonus pack 2. So,
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty tough. Pretty tough. Cool. Very cool. All right. Well, it's 7:15. If anybody's got anything else they want to add, then let's rock it. Other than that,
Headmaster Stu, we got
Yes.
a question.
okay. Ruben?
So me and Eric were playing a game, and we just had a routing question. I know original. But so are broken units that are not DM'd allowed to freely route during the route phase?
No, you have to
No.
be DM'd.
you have to
You
be
have
DM'd.
to be DM'd.
You got to be DM'd.
Okay, because it says here, because I looked at the rules, and it just says broken units cannot move unless it's the route phase. It doesn't mention anything about them being DM'd.
Right. Right. It's probably and then look under. Yeah. You might want to look up probably before that or the DM status, wherever the DM status is. It might have the one-liner where only DM units can route. That sort of thing. It probably qualifies those units in a different section. But yeah, if you're just reading like that, yeah, that's exactly how if I read that in a vacuum, that's how I would read it. Is any broken unit could route at that point. But yeah, you have to find that DM status on and apply it to those units. Absolutely. Yeah.
So can I just make my unit DM and move back, or does he have to be DM'd because of the enemy?
He has
He
to
has
be
to
DM'd.
DM because of the enemy. Yeah.
Okay.
You can't just say I want to go DM and move.
Okay.
Well,
Eric, that answers the question. I'll move him back.
But
it can be important because if you are because when you go to the end of the rally phase, it's the end of the rally phase that you're technically remove DM markers. Okay. But if you're not in a rally location, you can decide to keep the DM marker. If you
Right.
wish. Okay. At which point, then, if you're not in like a rally terrain, you can continue to route toward rally terrain at that point.
Well, we're in the middle of the fucking desert. We're all dying of heat stroke, man. We don't know anymore.
Then you're dropping dead.
Oh crap! I didn't mean to do this. You could switch that back. Switch that back. I'm sorry.
Hey,
Which one?
Eric, since
Yeah.
you're here, we went
Yeah.
over that crest status question earlier, and when
Yeah.
you are DM'd in crest status, you can be removed from crest status without any interdiction.
Even if you go into the gully and there's a unit that could shoot at you, that's not interdiction.
That you might get shot at. But if there was a woods right next to you, you could
Yeah.
move out of crest status in the gully into the woods for 3 and not get interdicted.
Right.
But I think once you go into that gully first and there's a unit that has line of sight to the gully, I think you do get interdicted there though, right?
Right, that makes sense.
Okay.
Well,
So did you ask?
You may not. I think we came to the conclusion you might not, because interdiction implies moving into a new hex, not moving into the hex.
Yeah, location hex.
The hex you're presently in.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, good.
So you may
That makes
want to be
sense.
careful about that.
Yeah, which will save a lot of those units in gully situations or wadi situations, in terms of interdiction.
Okay.
So, but double check on that, read up on that in terms of qualifiers for interdiction.
okay.
And again, if you're not entering a new hex, it's like your vehicles, right? If you start your vehicle, do you get the +2 for moving vehicle?
Mhm.
Not yet, because you haven't moved into a new hex.
You have not moved into a new hex, you do not qualify for it. So the same thing, the same
All right,
concept.
Did Craig ask the other question about the close combat with concealed
Yeah,
units?
they said that once
Um,
you enter close
Cra-
combat,
So we had a different situation. I'm sorry. Yeah. So we had a situation where, uh, let's see, he advanced into my hex and I was concealed. Okay. Now the rules say that you got to declare your attacks at the start of the close combat phase, right?
Mhm.
But they also say a concealed unit can keep concealment if it doesn't attack. So, in that situation, what do you have to do as the concealed guy? Do
Okay.
you have
All right.
do you
I've run into this question before. What you need to do is you need to look at the advanced sequence of play.
okay?
Okay, you have to pull that down because they clarify in the advanced sequence of play that the concealed unit does lose his concealment. Okay, I mean,
Whoa.
it's yeah. Hold on, let me
If he
pull that
attacks, if he attacks,
down. If he attacks,
Right.
right?
right?
So
Yeah,
here's the situation in that situation there. As a concealed unit, you could say at the start of the close combat, you could say I don't want to attack and keep my concealment.
Correct.
All right, and then when Craig rolls, he eliminates him. I can't go back and say, well, you know what? I want to do an attack now. You can't do that.
Can't do it.
Correct.
You forfeited
Yeah.
your attack
Yeah,
because you've gained the
yeah.
advantage of a concealment, right? You can't have your cake and
Right.
eat it too, because his
Okay.
attack firepower was halved.
All right. Now, what about the opposite? What if you decide at the start of close combat as a concealed unit, you say, yeah, I'm going to do 1 versus 1 on whatever, and then Craig rolls his first, miffs it, and then I go back and say, well, you know what? I'm not going to make that attack now. I want to keep my concealment. Can you do that?
Nope. You've declared
Okay.
your attack.
Because you
That's
declared
considered
your
simultaneous. Yeah, you've declared your attack. It's considered simultaneous. As soon as you declare your attack, you lose your concealment,
Got it.
regardless of
Okay.
who
So
rolls
I
first or
think
whatever.
that's how we ended up playing it.
Right.
I think that's
Yeah,
how we
yeah,
ended up playing it after a lot of deliberation, but it took
Yeah.
us a while to figure it out.
Yeah.
yeah. You definitely want to take a look. Yeah, if you go to like Texas ASL page, you can download Richardson's kind of expanded sort of advanced sequence of play. But I find that that's especially helpful in the close combat because it
We
does
weren't
kind
sure
of
what
hit
to
things
do.
in order.
We weren't sure what to do in this situation, so we said, "Oh God, just go ahead and roll, Eric," because I figured he wouldn't get shit, and he rolled snake eyes.
Well, there you go.
and
There you go.
then I said, well, yeah, I want this if I can get it, So that's
You got a new
because it
leader.
was like
Oh God.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I do find that at least for close combat, it's very useful to go through 8 because that really does kind of clarify a lot of things about like dummy stacks, when exactly you eliminate
Yeah.
them, and
Yeah.
all that sort of thing. And according to the ASL rulebook, the sequence of play has precedence over the rulebook.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right.
all that. So, okay. So,
That answers the question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, you guys.
okay.
Well,
And Stu, of course.
No, it's bad. Got that. But yeah, like they just keep checking those sections, and it looks like you guys were hammering it. But just think of the common sense of that. I mean, it's almost like if you have two concealed units, entering the same location. If one guy says, "Well, I'm not going to attack," well, in that case, I'm going to attack, and you don't get attacked. It's like, it's like the cart before the horse, or I don't know, whatever. But it's interesting. Yeah, so you guys seem to iron it out a little bit. And sometimes if it feels like it doesn't make sense, it probably doesn't. About 20% of the time, if it doesn't make sense, it's probably still a rule. But the other 80% of the
it definitely
time,
seemed wrong to do it.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
definitely seemed wrong to be like, oh yeah, well, I guess I do want to make that attack now.
Yeah. And so if it feels that way, then it's probably, especially in ASL, where they have a tendency to iron out even the most obscure of rules, and leave some obvious things out. But they pretty much try to cover it all, and it's there somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's there somewhere. Just keep reading that paragraph, and you'll find it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess in terms of like ASL, it's like in close combat, it's like it's even interesting because it's ambush and or buy versus concealed. So even if a concealed unit's an open ground, that's still a possibility for ambush.
Right.
Which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Took me a long time to figure that one out or experience that one. So,
yeah, well, yeah. I suppose it's not something you experience too often, but it was like, oh wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So you're concealed, you can ambush anywhere.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
So, not to keep bringing it up, so I looked up the DM rules, and it does not say that they have to be DM'd in order to move.
Is that an SK or ASL?
ASL.
All right. hold
What
on.
section did you look that up in?
10.62, and then I also looked it up at 10.4, and I've been like kind of like reading through it. I am not seeing anywhere where it says that, like, I'm not saying like I'll believe you, I'll take you at your word, but I'm like,
No,
just
don't.
for,
Don't. If we could be wrong. We could
I
be
mean,
wrong.
because I'm looked at broken units, looked at voluntary break, I looked at routing, and I don't see where it says he has to be DM'd in order to route.
All right, hold on. All right, I'll take a look.
Okay, 10.5. 10.5, routing.
10.5 routing, do not.
Page A24, top right corner. Middle of
Okay.
course, middle of the paragraph. Right above the example. A broken unit may route if currently under DM.
Okay. Broken that. May route if currently under DM, but it's saying if he's under DM he may route, but it doesn't say if he's not under DM.
Well, it only gives you the positive. It doesn't need to give you the negative.
Okay.
Right? It could easily say a broken unit cannot route if it doesn't have a DM. It could either say one or the other. Because you don't have to route if you're in DM, right? You could be in open ground, and I could just stay there, and I could keep DM, especially in the desert, right? I can keep DM and just keep running forever and ever and ever and ever.
Actually, you can't stay in open ground in desert.
Sure. You just
We
maintain
found-
your DM status if they're within normal range, depending on the desert scenario.
It says unless like yeah no we looked that up too because we were fighting the desert in the desert unless if it's not night and it's not broken or steppe terrain, if you're using just desert boards, if you're in open ground and if there's a known enemy unit 6 hexes away from you or less, you could be eliminated for failure to route, so you have to route. You can't just stay there if you're in open ground.
Right, but if you're at 7 hexes away, you can just stay there at 7 hexes.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and stay DM'd, right? Not that you
Yeah.
probably want to, but if you stay DM, you could continue to move at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And because most of that's all open ground anyway. Yeah.
Well, they really hit that one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Don't look at the beginning. It's either the first sentence, the middle sentence, or the last sentence. All the time. All the time. And so what I just highlighted mine, and what I've started doing on some of mine is just underlining it. There's like a red underline. Oops, I just lost the page there. So, and then just save it. Save your PDF. Well, I've got the PDF one, and just save your PDF, and that way when you're looking for it, trying to explain it to the next person, then it'll pop out of that paragraph because you kind of know where it is, right? I mean, and that's the whole key is I didn't know exactly where it is. I kind of knew where it was, and then once you start highlighting sections like that, like some guys will write in their rule book and mark where check mark on the side or check this out. Now you just highlight it with the computer, and that way you say, well, I don't remember exactly where it is, but I know where it is, and it's somewhere over here, and then you'll find it easier. As long as you can find the rules easier, like if you have no clue, like if I had to answer a question on amphibious invasion and do 768s have to jump over the side or can they come up front, I'd have to read the whole section and interpret the whole side. I don't even know the rule. So entering that sort of situation in a game is very bad on my part as a player. I need to at least know where the rule is and have some semblance of knowledge of that rule. I'm probably not going to get it right the first 10 times I'm going to play amphibious invasions with LVTs because you just don't play them that often. Or maybe you will. Maybe you do get it right. Say, this is easy shit. But, at least you've read them. You're familiar with kind of the sections where it talks about damage points and machine guns and passenger capacities and things like that. As long as you know where those sections are, and if you've read them before a couple times, then you could just pop it over again, and then you're both you and your opponent can answer the question easily. It's not like, you're in a maze, now you got to find the exit. It's not necessarily the case if you have already covered those particular sections. You may not know the answer, but you know where the answer is going to be located, and that speeds up play. Because I'm saying, oh, it takes forever to look up. I don't want to be looking up rules the whole game. Well, if you're looking up rules the whole game, you probably hadn't read them in the first place, or read them with enough like knowledge of where that particular section might be, that sort of thing. You know what I'm saying? So if I go directly to it, like if I know my keys are on the, if I put my keys in the same place every single time when I come home from work, if I'm looking for my keys, if I'm looking for the answer, I'm going to the one spot where they always are. And if they're not there, then I'm screwed. Right.
Yep.
So same sort of thing.
Yeah, I think we had one more question. I think we already know the answer to this.
Sure.
Because I think you and I ranted about how stupid it is. But
Ah.
so if so right now it's like a CVP game, and I have a broken artillery piece. If I roll a 6 on that and it's eliminated, does he get the CVP for that?
It's destroyed. Unless it specifically say he has to capture it, which some scenarios do. Yeah, some scenarios do. But it doesn't say he has to be the one destroying it most of the time. I mean, that'll be under the CVP in a section, right?
Yeah, and that's what we kind of thought. So I was just thinking, well, what's the point of me trying to repair my gun? If I break it, he's going to get it, and I just give him points for free.
The reason why you might want to repair it would be that gun might have more value because you might lose 6 points if that gun isn't repaired. But if you do repair that gun, it might save you 3 points. You know, if like your troops are getting overrun, especially if it's an IFE, if you don't repair that gun, those guys are gone. So you're losing 6. So you might as well repair it. And if you get it, boom. I mean, it's the same chance of repairing it as you do as breaking it. You know, 16% chance. And it's even. It's an even chance, 50-50. And people always look at the name. Like, people say, well, I don't want to self-rally that unit because I might roll 12 and eliminate. Well, if you roll Snake Eyes, you get a leader. And he's rallied. So you get a rally and a leader, regardless if it's a 6+1 or not, versus just eliminating the unit. There's far more positives out of the Snake Eyes than you do with the 12. You self-rally all the time. All the time. There's no reason why you would do that. Because well, there are a couple of reasons, but we won't go into some of the details. One would be CVPs. But you get, if you roll that Snake Eyes, you get leader, higher mobility. It can possibly rally other units that can help, fight with you later on. It's not a comparison. In my mind, as a player, there's no comparison at all. If I'm self-rallying and I'm trying to avoid a 12, I don't give a shit. Snake Eyes can win you the game. Easy. 12, he was already broken anyway. Who cares? Especially if he's a conscript, who cares? He's dead. He's never going to rally anyway. But if you roll Snake Eyes, he's there with the 6+1 leader. And then then he's behind the guys. Breaking route paths. Killing shit. But again, it's all your decisions. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. But and that's why when we reflect on games, what happens if where do you want to possibly self-rally this guy or self-rally this guy over here? Which one's going to give you a bigger advantage? The one guy on the front line or the one guy that might be on the side or behind him? Which one has greater value to you in that particular situation? Sometimes the guy in the front, sometimes the guy in the back. Again, situational. I'd much rather try to cut some route paths. Again, just like we showed the example earlier where that 9-2 was stuck in the street. We fired one guy instead of 2. The other guy moved around with some risk on getting there. But if he got there, we gained 12 victory points. We gained 12 straight up. If that was part of the victory conditions. Or we just eliminated them. Just no quarter, kill them. I don't give a shit. You just lost a 9-2 leader. That's worth that's worth probably 3 to 4 squads by himself. That's far well worth a risk. So, in my opinion, you might not think so. Again, game situations is all dependent. You might not, if you lose that 4-5-8 going over there, that could cost you the game. In that case, blast him with a 16 and just break him, make him run away. All on victory conditions, gentlemen. As we always say, always base your games on victory conditions. I touched on that a little bit last week, probably not to the best of explanations, but it's all based on victory conditions. The entire scenario is based on one thing you need to do or not do. Everything else is extraneous. Sometimes you need to preserve units. Sometimes you don't need a unit. You know, you need to take that scenario apart by reading the victory conditions, reading your OB, reading the terrain, reading your opponent's the setup or OB, and then the scenario special rules. All of that shit comes into play. You can't ignore any one of those pieces of the puzzle, and then I'm sure I'm missing a couple other things. You can't ignore any of those pieces of the puzzle, or you're going to be at a disadvantage. If you ignore any of that stuff, you could be a disadvantage. You know, it may not be a great disadvantage, but you're going to be fighting uphill. But if you know what you're up against, then you know what to do, or know somewhere what to do. You know, like Mark in his example right here on the map. You know, he figured, you know, he could, you know, pile his Chinese up here. That's just solid plan. You know, who's to say the Chinese don't come around the left side if he blocks them on the right side? You know, and you got that giant open lane down the middle that the Japanese could just set 2 mediums up and block the Chinese from coming back over. Those are risks that Mark has to evaluate, right? And any player has to evaluate. You could take them, you could ignore them, but but that decision is on you, right? You know, based on what you think the opponent might do. If he went down there and kind of flanked those Chinese units, that's a great maneuver. That's a great maneuver. He's got to take some risks, right? There's a lot of open ground up where Ben is. But again, what does Ben have? Japanese. If those are Italian units, I'm going through the town. I don't care. I'm going through the town. I'm not taking 3-4-6s up there as Italians. But the Japanese player, he can. Even 3-4-7s. They step produce, so what? He's still moving. You know? Take advantage of what you have in your OB. And Ben is doing exactly that. And, you know, Mark, he just got shorted, you know. It's hard to fight the Japanese, you know. Unless you give them a lot of bloody noses early, it's going to get rough later on in the game, gentlemen. Because the Japanese are most likely going to beat you, or if not, go 1-to-1 against you in close combat, and he has the advantage most of the time. You know, he has the advantage most of the time. If he's coming in full strength, it's going to be a long game, or very short if he's like, you know, bonsaiing you and rushing all your units. So take advantage of what you have, what you know your guys can do, and if you don't know what they can do, look it up. Every single time I play the Russians, I go back to the nationality characteristics. I've been playing Russians for a shitload. You know, I win a lot with the Russians, but I still read Berserk. I still read human wave rules when I set up a scenario. I need to know what the hell I'm doing before I get to that point. I still go over those rules before I go through my games, just to make sure I don't screw something up. Because for me personally, I hate doing something wrong where I know if I could have corrected that. Right? I get frustrated because, oh shit, I should have known better. You know, if I didn't know the rule, it's one thing, but I do know the rule. I just need to refresh it. You need to cover that and take that into your games. And at that point, whether you win or lose is fine. Doesn't matter. You had fun playing a game. You tried your best with your best abilities and with your plan, with whatever plan you're playing with. You say, okay, I'm going to do this, or, you know, whatever. You know, the Japanese, does he have to do bonsai all the time? No. He could threaten a bonsai all the time, and that's going to change your opponent's decision. You know, if you set up for a bonsai and he's, you know, it looks like a sweet bonsai attack, and then he just starts moving, and then he never bonsais, and you're prepping for the bonsai, you know, maybe that's part of his plan. You know, that's something that you have to read. But as long as you understand that he can do that, you're better off. Remember, it's not just your troops that you have to worry about, it's the opponent's troops as well. I always forgot when I started playing against the Germans, you better look at that scenario date, damn it. If you don't look at a scenario date when you're playing against the Germans, you probably lost the scenario already. You need to know that he's got Panzerfaust and anti-tank magnetic mines and shit like that. 44, 45. You better know that. And you better reread the Panzerfaust section to see how many he can fire at you. Because he will be moving units. Say, why is he moving that 247 next to my Sherman? I don't give a shit about him. And all of a sudden, you know, you've got a smokestack right next to your other units with a blaze next to it. Yeah, you better remember those. I forget them all the time. I always hate playing against the Germans because it's usually 44 and I can't get close to them. Yeah, so, but anyway, that's it for me. Well, thanks for coming, gents. Unless someone's got something pressing, we'll kick it next week. We'll keep it to 5:30. But Really great sessions, really super duper questions. And obviously, as you've guessed, a lot of them don't have very simplistic answers. Some of them do, but some of them, you just stretch your mind. Okay, how does this evolve? How does this affect? Go to that next step. Take your game to that next step. Be familiar with what you can do. Be familiar with where you can route. Like Rootin, be familiar that you can keep the DM on or not keep it on to keep moving or whatever the case may be. You don't have to lose it. Or lose it and then bring a leader up in open ground to rally him right in the front line. And so the more you're familiar with the game, you don't have to know it all. The more you're familiar with what you need to do in the game, the much more better off you'll be, the much more success and fun you'll have, and the bigger challenge you'll pose to your opponents. And so that's the best thing about the game is there's always room to improve. And so that's about it.
All right, great. Thank you as always, Stu.
All right.
Thanks again.
Thanks for showing up,
Bye,
guys.
All right, then.
All
Good
right,
night,
take
everyone.
care. Have a great night.
I posted the hedge rule link on the general tab.
Oh, thanks, John.
Oh, cool. Yeah, good.
That's
Thanks.
perfect. Thank you, John.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, then. Good night, everyone.
All right, thank you for watching another episode of Tactical Tuesday. Again, Tuesday, 5:30 PST. Hopefully it'll be going good. My computer's semi-stable. That's why we got our episode. That's why we've been gone for a while. I apologize for that. Haven't had very much, if anything at all, new ASL content. I've got one coming out soon, so take a look for that. Really soon. And hopefully we'll be back on track with giving you guys some good content. All right? And if you don't like the content, let me know. Let me know what you want to see. That's how we drive what you guys want to look at. I don't want to give you something you really don't want to look at. Or maybe some other, content creator could provide. So we all can't do everything. And so I think that's why each one of us has our own special channel. All right? Thanks a lot, guys. Go play some ASL.